Ukraine is a country in Europe. It exists next to another country called Russia. Russia is a bigger country. Russia is a powerful country. Russia decided to invade a smaller country called Ukraine. So basically that's wrong.
Inflection point, I believe, in the world economy. Not just the world economy, in the world. It occurs every 3 or 4 generations. As one of the top military people said to me in a secure meeting the other day, 60 million people died between 1900 and 1946. And since then, we established a liberal world order, and that hadn't happened in a long while. A lot of people dying, but nowhere near the chaos. And now is a time when things are shifting. There's going to be a new world order out there, and we've got to lead it. And we've got to unite the rest of the free world. Time when things are shifting. There's going to be a new world order out there, and there's going to be a new world order out there.
Say about dictators of countries like Indonesia, who we sell weapons to, yet they are slaughtering people in East Timor. What do you have to say about Israel, who is slaughtering Palestinians, who impose martial law? What do you have to say about that? Those are our allies. Why do we sell weapons to these countries? Why do we support them? Why do we bomb Iraq when it commits similar problems?
There are various examples of things that are not right in this world, and the United States is trying. I really am surprised that people feel that it is necessary to defend the rights of Saddam Hussein. And what we ought to be thinking about is how to make sure that he does not use weapons of mass destruction.
I'd like to
shouting, just a moment.
I'm not defending them in the least. What I am saying is that there needs to be consistent application of U.S. foreign policy. We cannot support people who are committing the same violations because they are political allies. That is not acceptable. We cannot violate UN resolutions when it is convenient to us. You're not answering my question, Madam Albright.
We have heard that 500,000 children have died. I mean, that's more children than died in Hiroshima. And you know, is the price worth it?
I think this is a very hard choice, but we think the price is worth it.
What's on your radar?
Protect democracy. This is what we hear over and over as to why we're involving ourselves between two neighboring countries 6,000 miles away while risking escalating a nuclear war. Ukrainians need our help fighting against a brutal dictator who controls the press and squashes dissent, they say. Now, that might be true about Putin, but oddly, the very man, Zelensky, who is supposed to be protecting fragile Ukrainian democracy, just banned 11 opposing political parties and nationalized all news to ensure the only message people hear is, quote, unified information. Yes, the man who is supposed to be protecting democracy just got rid of it using emergency powers under martial law. One party he banned, the For Life Party, holds 43 seats in Ukraine's national parliament. It's the largest of the opposition parties and even condemned Russia's invasion. But as of right now, they're suspended, all because we're protecting democracy. This illogical rhetoric would be typically mind-bending, but we've heard so much illogical propaganda these past couple of years, many of us are desensitized to it by now. Nothing makes sense anymore, but we could still try. So try to make sense of this. The 11 political parties Zelensky banned are mostly considered left-wing. The Opposition for Life Party, which I just mentioned, Sharij Party, Nashi Opposition Bloc, Left Opposition, Union of Leftists, Derzava, Progressive Socialist Party of Ukraine, Socialist Party of Ukraine, the Socialists, and Volodymyr Saldo's bloc. Many of these parties are anti-war, against joining any foreign military alliance, and call for better relations with their Russian cousins. And by the way, I say cousins because that's what they are. It's important to remember that 11 million Russians have Ukrainian family. Putin's own goddaughter is Ukrainian. These two countries are very intertwined. In the address announcing the ban of the parties, Zelensky stated, "The activities of those politicians aimed at division or collusion will not succeed, but will receive a harsh response. Therefore, the National Security and Defense Council decided, given the full scale of war unleashed by Russia and the political ties that a number of political structures have with this state, to suspend any activity of a number of political parties for the period of martial law. So there you have it. War is the excuse. Now, I get that Ukraine is at war, and I deeply sympathize with the Ukrainian people dodging bombs because their government is corrupt and under the influence of money, that is. And that's same for the Russians. Both sides are extremely corrupt, and they're fighting, and these average citizens are trying to dodge everything that's going on there. It's tragic.
Well, hello, and welcome to another episode of News from the Pew, where I, your humble host, Rick Barrett, the Armed Catholic, went out and found 4 charter members of the Ariana Grande fan club to bring you the latest news from around the interwebs. So let's bring them on. That's Mr. Steve Cunningham, Mr. Fwazi Yazi, Mr. Jonathan Arrington, and Mr. Ryan Grant.
I've seen her on The Voice.
Yeah, we know. It's no shame here, man. It's a judgment-free zone, but we have a lot of stuff to talk about today, and so let's get right into it. The big news in Catholic in the Catholic sphere is the consecration, which ironically enough, not many people really know about. If you kind of ask your average Catholic, they're kind of like, "What are you talking about?" That's taking place tomorrow, which, by the way, shameless plug, you can catch it live on the Crusade channel. Mike Church and myself will be covering it starting at 11 a.m. Central Time, crusadechannel.com. Shameless plug once again. But we also are seeing that the division that we all really didn't want to see, and I'm not trying to troll people, but I'm just making this point again, is becoming a little bit more settled. But we also, before we start into that, Fwaz, you won last week the poll, soundly defeating Ryan. So you get to pick whether you go first or last. The winner of last week's poll gets to decide which way the order goes.
I went first last week, so I'll go last.
There we go. So in that case, Jonathan, you are up first. We'll go Jonathan, Ryan, Steve, then Fwaz. Jonathan, thoughts? Because the consecration is tomorrow. You don't have to mention the stuff about Catholic infighting if you don't want to. We all know that, unfortunately. I just want to get your final thoughts on, have you seen the actual transcript? It's come out, the prayer that's come out, and what do you think?
Yes, I've seen the various versions now that have made their way online. Something that did surprise me among all the Catholic infighting, and which I called right off the bat, is that there were people out there suggesting, and no judgment, we're, I think, right to be maybe have a wait and see attitude, but folks who were actually suggesting that things were going to be in the prayer that were idolatrous or very highly suggestive of idolatry that didn't end up being in the versions, that made its way around Catholic social media and whatnot, suggesting there was going to be an invocation of Pachamama or Pachamama, depending on who you ask. And it seems like that's kind of par for the course right now. That Satan does not want this to happen. He does not want everybody to be on board praying for the Holy Father and the bishops in preparation for it. So, of course, diabolically, it makes sense that all this stuff would be coming up, but it's still, it's sad to see it when it does happen. The only thing I'll repeat is something that's come up in my biblical classes this week is God loves to grant us the gift of humility if we would but ask for it. And so maybe enough people have taken Father Ripperger's advice and said, ask for the prayer, asking the prayer that God will always say yes to. God, grant me more humility, and he will do it promptly and sometimes in ways that will knock you off your feet, both literally and metaphorically. And who could ever have predicted this? So yeah, we keep praying, and I've been pleasantly surprised at how many of my own students, who are folks who just go to your average parish that's closest to them, have known about it and have been praying the rosary, a novena of rosaries, ever since they heard about it 10 days prior to the consecration, so 9 days prior to today. So I've been pleasantly surprised by the spiritual pouring out of prayers in preparation for it.
Excellent, excellent. Let's see. It was Steve. You are up next. Your thoughts on those? Have you seen the prayer? Thoughts on it? And leading up to the countdown, this is a momentous event. Your thoughts as we get close to it?
I just think it's going to get screwed up. I think something good might come out of it. Maybe like Pius XII. I mean, didn't do it right, and something good came out of that. And I guess just something good after JP2 as well. But I didn't read the prayer itself. I know it came out. Everyone, their brother's been talking about for the last couple of days ad nauseum. I know John Henry got on Glenn Beck's show. That was pretty good. Talk about Fatima on that big of a platform for 20 minutes. And we should be worried more about what the laity has to do, which is do the message of Fatima ourselves in the terms of going to the first 5 Saturdays repeatedly. If you get 5 done, do it again. Do all 5 of the promises or requests that are supposed to be done with it, and say your rosary better and better every time, and concentrate harder and pray. And there's a book that Sophia sent me on your predominant fault, and it goes through sloth, and it talks about the priest goes, this is from like 60, 80 years ago. Are you slothful as representative of being slouchful when you're praying, or not thinking about what you're saying, or let your mind easily get distracted and not trying to rein it in, or saying your prayers laying down or sitting down, or things like that. Be lazy in your actions and thoughts and words and that like that. So we just need to better ourselves, become more holy.
Indeed. Ryan, you're up. Thoughts on the consecration?
Principally that I try to have as few as possible. The first thought that comes to my mind is that when he announced he was going to consecrate them very especially, why did it seem like everyone jumped to the conclusion that he was going to consecrate Fatima, or do the consecration of Fatima and do it right? At least it seemed like, well, why would there be any expectation of that, since the Vatican still maintains that the 1984 consecration of John Paul II was sufficient? So, and that Sister Lucy had said this, and so on and so forth. So why did anyone think that he was looking to redo that consecration or to do it properly or what have you? And so that leads on to little surprise if some people are kind of nervous, because I'm sure in the Vatican they're looking at the chatter online and saying, oh, well, people think this is happening, but we already did that, so you better change it. And then surprise, it changes to what I jokingly call a Pachamama consecration. I have no idea. Maybe, I mean, it's not impossible that Our Lady will accept it in some way, or she'll accept it fully. It'll be done right by, like Balaam's ass, they intend to do one thing, but then the other comes out. I have no idea. And so I'm just going to get up 9 a.m. Pacific time will be 5 o'clock Rome time when they're supposed to be doing it. And, say the rosary and do a consecration to the Immaculate Heart I have in an older book. And, to join with that, and we'll see what happens, really, because otherwise, I don't want to be putting out there, yeah, this is going to happen and this is going to happen. Well, I have absolutely no idea what's going to happen, and really nobody does until after the fact.
Indeed. Fwaz, your thoughts?
Hey, thanks, guys. Happy to join you guys here again. I just want to piggyback with what you guys have said, Steve, Jonathan, and Ryan. I don't have much to add except for the fact that I did see the prayer, and the addition was a bit frustrating. It's almost like just do it the right way. But I will say this: we've seen in the past. If I go Old Testament, I remember Moses himself was the one who struck the rock twice. He himself was not welcomed into the promised land, but God still kept his promise and allowed the Israelites to enter in. So it's one of those things to where we could possibly see the promise be fulfilled. He is mentioning Russia, so that's good. So I'm gonna look at the positive of this and do my part as a layman, like what Steve said, and do what I have to do with penance and prayer in the first Saturdays, and go about it that way. That's all I can do. I have no authority other than that, just prayer and penance of myself. So I just hope that, and it's one of those things where we might see Our Lady accept it and start cleaning the room by allowing the dirt to come out first and slowly starting to take things out and making the room as clean as possible. And what I mean by that is we might we might see after the consecration things possibly get worse before we see the peace that we're looking for.
Yeah, that's those are all great points, gentlemen. And so that's really it. You can have whatever opinion you want, but it's happening. So I think we should all pray for the best and see what takes root there. You are watching News from the Pew. If you like what you're hearing, please subscribe, share, and also like, so we can all boost our ego, because that's really what it's all about. Moving on next to SCOTUS, we have some. We had an interesting bit of confirmation hearings this week, because we
I thought you meant SCOTUS the philosopher. I got excited for a second.
Oh, no. That's too highbrow for this show. What are you talking about, man? No. We're staying a couple rungs below that. I don't even know what you're talking about. So in that regard, the SCOTUS, the political theater that is SCOTUS, took place with Kengia Brown Jackson, or is it Brett Jackson Brown? I keep getting it confused. Looking into her, she's the eventuality, to quote the second Matrix movie. She's the eventuality of the anatomy that is communism and Marxism, and that's what you get here. The big thing that some people have kind of had a problem with is the focus on the fact that she is very, very sympathetic to child pornographers and to pedophiles, and how this whole thing goes with being okay and being kind of progressive and moving on to these things. Have you guys watched or seen any of the clips from them? What are your thoughts about it? John, I know you have something you wanted to talk about real quick in regards to the consecration before you give your response, and then let us know what you want to your thoughts on Miss KBJ.
Yeah, I was just going to say some of our objections or maybe concerns about the consecration. Bishop Athanasius Schneider addresses actually verbatim, kind of to the word of some of the common objections out there, and actually bases it on the text that the Vatican published and has already printed out as a booklet for St. Peter's. So, just to go based on what we actually have. I mean, something could change between now and tomorrow, but we don't. I mean, it seems to me we don't want to assume the worst either of the Pope or what's actually been put out there. So I think Bishop Snyder did a pretty good job of that. But I mean, in regard to this joke of a lady, there's something diabolical about it, clearly, because it always seems to go back to these ritualistic, abusive things with the worst folks that Biden and others want to get involved, as it were, and especially for something like the Supreme Court, which is supposed to be the apolitical body, or nonpartisan body, and to a certain extent, much more so than the presidency, vice presidency, and all of the Congress. It has, I don't know, it's avoided some of the goofiness. Obviously, you've got the ridiculous rationale given behind Roe v. Wade and some other crazy things all the way back before the turn of the century. But at the same time, it does end up being an important part of American life. So to hear her say something as goofy as I can't answer that, I'm not a biologist. The only thing that I could think of in response was, I'm not a biologist either, but I knew by the time I was in 4-year-old kindergarten the difference between a boy and a girl, because we were told to go to different bathrooms. And so I see that the great Anthony Ezelin came out with a little meme of sorts, or gave several other examples, talking about is this Earth, or is this some other planet? I'm not a geologist, I can't say, and some other sorts of funny responses that are just as the irony is just too thick. You could cut it with a knife. So
we went from believe all women to some women are okay to what is a woman. And the second point I'll make is I don't have to be a meteorologist to tell you if it's raining or not. What do you think, Steve?
Can you provide a definition for the word woman?
Can I provide a definition?
Mm-hmm.
No.
Yeah.
I can't.
You can't?
Not in this context.
So
I'm not a biologist.
I'm not a mathematician, but I think I know what 2 + 2 is.
As Langston Hughes wrote, "Oh, let America be America again."
I love this clip.
The land that never has been yet, but yet must be the land where everyone is free. Oh, yes, I say it plain. America never was America to me, but I swear this
Merciful
oath,
heavens.
America will be.
Oh, Corey.
That is the story of how you got to this desk.
You
You
people
and
in New
I,
Jersey should be
everyone
ashamed of
here,
yourselves.
generations of folk who came here
Wait for
and
the
said,
fake tears.
America, I'm Irish. You may say, no, Irish or dogs need to apply, but
Yeah,
I'm
go
going to show
Spartacus.
this country that I can be free here. I can make this country love me as much as I love it.
I have a dream today.
Chinese Americans first forced into near slave labor, building our railroads,
Yeah,
connecting
you still
our
won't let
country.
Chinese people into Ivy League
Saw
college.
the ugliest of America, but they were going to build their home here and say, America, you may not love me yet, but I'm going to make this nation live up to its promise and hope.
Don't worry, it gets better.
LGBTQ Americans, from Stonewall women to Seneca,
Oh, he's
hidden
going.
figures who
Go
didn't
for
even
it.
get their play until some Hollywood movie finally talked about them and how they were critical for us defying gravity. All of these people loved America. And so you faced insults here that were shocking to me. Well, actually not shocking.
Oh, she's crying too.
Wait for it.
But you are here because of that kind of love. And nobody's taken this away from me.
Just right here.
So you got 5 more folk to go through. 5
More
more of
cringe
us.
in the Star Wars Christmas special.
And then you can sit back and let us have all the debates. And I'm going to tell you, it's going to be a well-charted Senate floor because it's not going to stop. They're going to accuse you of this
Hollywood.
and that. Heck, in honor of your
Politics really is
person who
Hollywood.
shares
for
your
ugly
birthday, you might be called a communist. But don't
Because she
worry,
probably is.
my sister.
God's on your side.
Don't worry.
people. wrong God.
God has got you.
Did you mean a lot?
And how do I know that? Because you're here.
You're here.
And I know what it's taken for you to sit in
A lot
that
of child
seat.
sacrifice.
Yep.
A lot of baby sacrifice there.
Brother.
That is, yeah. The problem is most of our leaders at this point, and then I'll throw it back to Steve, is they're all they all have high school mindsets. They never grew up past high school. So it's all performance, it's all emotion, it's all this other nonsense. Steve, go on.
The whole world's a stage, right? As you've said, politics is show business for ugly people. I mean, man, I mean, she was elected strictly, or she was nominated strictly for being a woman and being black. Now, I mean, I don't know how else you could say the content of character has been rejected. How can any of these guys say anything about MLK when literally the only reason why Biden picked her, as he said in his own words, black and woman. That's it. And on top of that, I mean, we got, Russ Duhan. We went over this with ACB. Back in the day, nobody cared about SCOTUS. No one cared about going to the Supreme Court as a judge. It was looked upon as something like the guys would get nominated and say, I don't want to do that, and just leave me be. Now, all of a sudden, it's a big news. It's primetime TV, the nominations, you got all this hoorah stuff going on there, and everyone goes with justice by judiciary. That's what we got. We got a ruling, everyone goes, we got to go to SCOTUS. A ruling, we got to get SCOTUS. Abortion, we got to have SCOTUS rejected. No, let's not go state rights and get rid of it. Oh, I said state rights. Slavery, you neo-Confederate. Cue up to Dr. Wood's argument with a zombie. Well, John Taylor Carrollton in the 1790s and 1820s wrote Tyranny of, what's his book that John Taylor wrote? Brian McClanahan, he actually just talked about too. I got it in the other room. But anyway, he talks about state rights in the 1820s, how that was basically a big deal at that time. States created the federal government. That's why the great thing about the Confederate Constitution, I know I'm not supposed to say the C word, it got rid of all these federal courts. It didn't have the power of SCOTUS as it does today. SCOTUS rules. You got 9 unelected tyrants up there. You're going to have this lady. She's going to get elected. That if anybody has any question about that, they're smoking something, please pass the hookah pipe. She's going to get elected. You got a lady up there that's pro-abort, pro-tranny, pro-everything that's insane, and she's going to be somehow ruling blindly. It's a clown show, and the only thing I could say is divorce from D.C. It's the only political answer to it. It eliminates all that nonsense in D.C.
Yeah, it's funny. SCOTUS nomination hearings are like Lindsey Graham's Super Bowl. Like, he doesn't do anything else for a couple of years, but when he gets there, oh man, is he like, I'm gonna get you and I'm gonna tell you this. And he goes off. There was one part where he was going back and forth with her.
Yeah.
And he was like, good. I hope you go to jail for 50 years if you get that porno. And it's just like all kinds of fundraising letters. Like he gets those clips so he can send them out. He lives for a good Supreme Court confirmation.
When the highlight is Graham 3 hours, his seat's gone for 3 hours. You know it's a clown show. I mean, really, that's the headline.
Yep. What do you think, Ryan?
As it's been mentioned, it's all a show, and really, and we go back to like the thing everyone's making the big deal about, namely her comment. Well, I don't know what a woman is. Am I a biologist, right? And everyone's mocking that. Well, the thing is, it's a purposely evasive answer to get around all the basically the hullabaloo that the media and the powers that shouldn't be have created around everything trans and everything, all the nonsense, that the absolute rejection of common sense in every way. We're going to say, yeah, we're going to put a man in a woman's sport, and we'll let him pretend he's a woman. And as he goes to win all these championships because it's physically stronger because he's biological man, you can't say that. No. So, and the thing is, as a jurist, if she can call that, she's making a purposely evasive answer, no different than ACB when she made purposely evasive answers concerning Roe v. Wade and all these other subjects. And so, because all these things, you're a jurist, you might have to rule in these issues. You really can't talk about it. And the whole purpose, constitutionally speaking, of the Supreme Court nomination hearing is basically, it's pro forma. You were basically making sure this person actually has some kind of law background, understands the law, and is competent to make rulings within the law. That's the idea of it. I do think that you could make a good argument that she is not fit for the court based on how she rules in child porn and child molestation cases. Arguing for the humanity of the guy who committed the crime as a reason to not punish him for the crime. I think that's good as reason as any to say this person is not a competent jurist. More so than the thing everyone's putting all their attention on, but but also in like Steve alluded to, I wouldn't even just say the Supreme Court or like your real lawmakers. They're gods essentially, and for most people they are, as long as they continue to rule that you can have abortion on demand and you can have all these things. They're gods. And that's, I remember that line in the movie Gladiator where he's cutting off the tattoo on his shoulder, the mark of the Roman state, SPQR, Senatus Populusque Romanus, right? In which the Senate and the Roman people, that's the symbol of the state. And the state is personified, especially in under the Principate. It's like a god, essentially. And so this in Dijman Hansu plays the African fellow that fights with Maximus. He says, "Is that a sign of your gods?" And he smiles and he laughs as he's scraping it off. That is the reality, is that government is a god, and the Supreme Court are like the special gods made manifest to give you law from on high. And the whole notion of natural law, divine positive law, and any other type of law has been eviscerated away. And even the idea that we have lawmakers to make the common good. No, they're there to rubber stamp whatever lobbyists and corporations put in. They don't actually do real lawmaking in any sense. So it's all going to come down to the courts, and that's the show we're watching, is which one's going to be the next god on the court to determine what rights you do and don't have. And that's really all it is.
Yeah, it is a pretty sad remark on that, and most people don't think about how important SCOTUS confirmation hearings. Oh, we got to get our guys in so we can get the right judges. Well, that means if that's your political philosophy, then the whole thing is already a wreck, because they're the backstop. They're not supposed to be. They weren't supposed to be a critical component. Fwaz, I know you got things to say about this. Jump on in.
Hey, thanks, guys. Yeah, I got 3 points to make on this, and I'll make it quick. Number one, I am extremely frustrated by these rhinos or so-called conservatives out there. This is, like you guys have been saying, this is a circus show. These hearings, they're all circus shows, because number one, Lindsey Graham can sit there and talk all he wants, but he's going to go and push that button and confirm her anyways. And because she'd already been confirmed a year ago, because she was probably already nominated a long time ago from the same people who are out there creating these sound bites so they can rile up their basis and continue their, money making. Like you said, it was a fundraising opportunity for him. So that's what frustrates me. Number one. Number two, her logic is incredibly. You can break down the premise pretty easily. Well, number one, if you cannot define a woman, then how are you calling yourself the first Black woman to be nominated? And her response would probably be, well, subjectively, I can identify as woman. Well, if woman is subjective, then can we find some loophole in this and then declare Clarence Thompson somehow a woman, and therefore he's the first woman, a Black woman nominated and seated in the judge? You can't call yourself the first Black woman and cannot define what a woman is. And number three is my last point is, what frustrates me about these hearings is you got these gotcha questions that bring out the hypocrisy of the left. Well, I'm getting sick and tired of people calling out the hypocrisy of the left because it doesn't do anything. As Al Linsky said, do not have any principal standards, but hold the other side to their own. So my issue here is, what they're doing is they're calling out the hypocrisy. The left sits there, they take it because they don't care. All they care about is ultimate power. So they'll sit there and they'll be embarrassed, live TV like she was, or for example, Fauci was with his exchange with Rand Paul. They'll sit there, they'll take it, and they'll just move on because they have the institutions and the powers. Now, if I was going to find out what pushes someone's button, I would try to find out what they react to. Because clearly calling out the hypocrisy in public doesn't do anything, because their whole entire worldview is based on hypocrisy. So what is the one thing that they fear? And it's power. And how do I know this? It's because when Ron DeSantis came out with this bill about the transgender theory with I think it was kindergarten through 3K or 5K, they went nuts. They mobilized bigger organizations. They mobilized corporations like Disney to push back. So ultimately, what they're most fearful of is you've got folks on the other side who are in power, and that's where they're going to mobilize. It's not calling in the hypocrisy. It's not putting out memes. They don't care about that. All these ultimate power, they don't care how they get it. So if you really want to fight back, you got to take over the school boards. You got to take over the local elections. You got to, like Steve said, think locally, because the fact that they are mobilizing against DeSantis shows you what their fear is guys in power go against their agenda. So I think the conservatives need to remobilize and infiltrate from the grassroots back up the school boards like they did. Because other than that, we're going to keep calling them hypocrites as they march on to more power.
Indeed. If I may add something, I was a school teacher for 10 years before I wised up and got out of it. The thing with the school boards, and I think it's a great first start, but what I warned about 8 months ago when this was kind of becoming a thing is, school board is great. What are you going to do with it? Because as a former teacher, I know that most teachers, A, make fun of parents, B, they'll shut the door and teach whatever they want, and C, the more you push back, the more it emboldens them as resistance fighters. So I always ask people who say, and I think taking over the school board is fine, Fawaz. I'm not saying you're wrong in that regard. My question is, what are you going to do with it? And I always say, because you're going to have to make the tough choice and fire every single one of them. And as soon as I say that, everybody's like, what? We can't do that, because who's going to teach them? It's like, maybe you. But I mean, if you guys want to touch on this real quick, the whole idea about, and I like Fawaz's point about having to get back at the local level, but let me ask you this. We can take back school boards, and then we have this feeling like, well, that's enough. And we never go the final step to actually secure a win. We always like these half measure type of actions. So let's just go around real quick and think, am I wrong? Am I right? Do you think what is your thoughts, Jonathan?
What specifically about being right or wrong?
Do you think that we don't do enough as conservatives and that we enjoy half-hearted measures? All right, we get the school board and then we're like, that's fine, that's it. We don't need to go any further.
Maybe some of us do, but just speaking as a father of 6 young children, it takes just about all the energy I have each day to get to daily mass, to make sure that my kids pray with us and are learning what they need to do in order to become, the sorts of Catholics and eventually, hopefully, citizens of some semi-sane state. I don't know. I would love to be more involved in doing things like that, but I just barely make it taking care of the jobs that I have right now that are actually part of my state and life. So, I mean, I think we ought to do as much as we can in those regards, but especially regarding local government, school boards, things like that. But at the same time, if we don't see others doing that right now, we also have to be pretty patient and understand that there's a lot to do just in the domestic sphere, that the world, for sure, the reason public schools have become so much of a crutch is because, I think you kind of suggested there, Rick, the very thought that parents might have to educate their own children, not just in religion, but even outside of that, and maybe homeschool, is verboten. You wouldn't talk about that. You wouldn't dare with many. But I think the average devout Catholic, it's right to talk about that with the average devout Catholic, who sees the ridiculousness of so much that's going on, both in the nation civilly, but also in the church. So I don't know why we wouldn't just press people to say, hey, homeschool, and then with whatever leftover time you may have, sure, run for some sort of local position that might actually influence things. As Steve always says, that's the only way you're going to get something done. But remembering that our first obligations are to take care of our family and our state and life, to make sure that we're providing for our family with the corporal needs and all as well.
Excellent. Steve, I know you got a video real quick, if you want to show that before you go.
Let me pull that. I'm sorry. I was wasn't ready. It was a share screen thing. It was a video from Columbia University that was shown to ninth graders.
Pronouns are used in place of a person's name. While many use she, her, and he, him pronouns, a growing number are using other pronouns like they, them, ze, them, ze, here, per, pers, and am.
Those are real? I thought that was a joke.
It's real.
Columbia University.
Identity or expression.
It's 90,000 years.
Someone's pronouns are she, they. That's just a quicker way to indicate that a person uses she, her, hers, and they, them, theirs pronouns. Others do not use pronouns for themselves and wish only to be referred to by their name.
You can't know a person's gender by just looking at them. Asking
Catch
for
that?
and using correct pronouns
Well, wait,
is a
some
way to
people are
respect
that
those around
kind
you
of true.
and create an inclusive
There
environment.
is true into that statement, yes.
This is especially
Crocodile-
important for
Crocodile
queer and
Dundee.
transgender people. If you slip up and use the wrong pronouns, simply correct your mistake
They
and
are.
move on.
I'll double
Intentionally misgendering someone by refusing to use the correct pronouns or name is a violation of the Columbia University non-discrimination policy.
And we will execute you.
Words matter. Even unintentional errors can create challenges.
Indeed.
Research shows that using someone's correct pronouns has a big impact on their mental health and well-being.
Normalizing pronoun sharing helps create a safer space for people of all genders and gender
Oh,
expressions.
kumbaya.
So, in introductions, share your own pronouns first. Use pronouns with your name in meetings and on name tags. And add your pronouns and this video to your email signatures, in your bio, and in chat. Together, we can create a more inclusive Columbia community for all those around us.
Most college kids are suffering from anxiety.
Yeah.
I mean, no wonder they all just like drink.
Rick, I need you to text me your pronouns next time you write me.
Yeah, I don't think you want to get my pronouns. But
Next time you introduce everybody, you get the pronouns for everybody first.
As
At
the
least-
art
at least
Catholic,
they said
buddy,
words
mine are
Yeah.
SAEA. You can figure it out.
They said words matter, though. They actually did grant part of what we've been saying all along. Words do matter. Like
Their words matter.
X, Y, and XX. That does matter.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, to piggyback off Jonathan is, yeah, you have to have the hierarchy. They have to have the fundamentals, to use a sports term. If you can't try to start shooting threes, if you can't get layups or just a little short 1 foot bank shot down, you can't start, doing crossovers and pivot turn dribbles if you can't dribble with one hand without bouncing off your foot.
The sports ball, you lost me.
We lost Ryan. There's no clue about you can't throw a 5-yard. You can't throw a 50-yard pass if you can't dump it off 5 yards.
Can't hit a home run through the field goal, man.
Yeah, it is. It's you got to hit your knees first. You got to get you got to know why you're Catholic. One, study the faith. You got catechism books. If you don't know a good one to go, I know a Mediatrix Press website that has the Bellarmine Catechism. Hint, hint. Go get that. Start out with that. Learn to say some prayers first. You don't have to go for the whole 9 yards. Start with 1 decade of rosary. Do the living rosary of Venerable Jericho, how she did it. Get 5 people, say a decade. Then get those 5 people, say another decade. The Infant of Prague, our Father Anthony Mary did a great one this past weekend. I'll go to the Transalpine Redemptorist website and check that, or YouTube channel, check that out. Talks about having to get we needing holy men, holy people, holy nuns. Because he says what we need in Australia and New Zealand is a lot more guns. No, we need nuns, not guns, nuns. We need more nuns to be praying along with holy men. We don't have any of this. Because he's trying to promote the devotion to the infant Jesus of Prague. But we got to get that first. And
we need
then,
nuns with guns.
Yeah, nuns with guns. So there's a photo of that. And then, yes, if you're called to run for an office or something, do it. But take it before the tabernacle and start asking and learn. We don't need imbeciles up there in office under the guidance say, hey, we're Catholic and being terrible. You'll bring us back further. So there's that book that Sophia came out with. It was coming out within a month on the Christian principles by a Dominican nun. Actually, is very Thomistic with vintage Fulton Sheen intro to it, and it breaks down everything you want to know about social issues, government, and principles of that nature. From it gets even into communism, but what are rights? What is the state? What are laws? And things like that. We need to know that stuff so that when something like this comes up, we can say, I got to do something about this. And instead of going, well, what do I got to do? I know nothing. You already have that foundation in you to be able to run. Hey, do I want to run for dog catcher? Do I want to run for mayor? Do I want to run for school thing? Do I want to run for governor? Don't think about DC. Forget about running for president or the Congress or things like run for local. Clean up your backyard. And if everybody focused on their backyard, that would grow. Kind of like what's his face? Hamish Fraser talks about that, how communists had cells, a little 5 group here, 5 group here, 5 group there, and that just expanded. If we implemented that same idea of growing the faith that way, growing true Christian principles and politics that way, then we would just spread. And that would incorporate your backyard, and then that would grow to your neighborhood, city, state, and then it just filters out. But we can't just sit back and say, oh, well, I got nothing. I can't do anything about it. I guess I'll just sit back and tweet all day. No, if you did your job, you wouldn't have enough time to be tweeting.
Yeah, I think there is that American tendency to fall back on politics instead of the faith, and that's something I gotta add to it. Ryan,
the term conservative, it always baffles me, because we have no notion of what they're conserving, except where the liberals were 20 years ago, which now is conservative by comparison. So now they're trying to conserve that, and so on and so forth down the rabbit hole. We absolutely can't talk about, well, counter-revolution. Going back, we don't need crazy communists, liberals. We don't need reactionary conservatives. We need counter-revolutionaries. That's what we need to the whole system of madness that we have currently. So don't trust the state, and don't trust the media, and don't trust all the institutions that try to create the trust in those other institutions, like public schools. Yeah, so what? You got some guy in the school board. It's like, look, I don't care if we're talking about someone with pronouns in their bio in the alphabet realm trying to talk about queer sex or whatever with kindergartners. Why is anyone talking about sex with kindergartners? Why is that what we're upset about? With the whole notion of sex education and the idea that somebody in a school whom I don't know is going to sit down and talk to my kids about sex is absolutely asinine at any level. I don't care if you're even talking about, normal sex or whatever. It's the job of the parents, and especially in this culture, for some reason, a lot of people fail at this, and there's all this weirdness and tension about it. But it is the job of the parents to pass on the notion of what marital relations are to their children, and to prepare them so when they go into marriage, they understand what these things are, what they're used for. And so, before they're anywhere near there, actually, as they're going through puberty, they have to understand the changes that are going on in their bodies. They have to understand what this is, especially girls too, and they really need to understand what's going on in men. And then you might not have so many problems with these various modesty issues. And there's a lot of people who aren't doing that. Oh no, we can't talk to them about that. And then you're leaving your children ignorant. Guess who is talking about it? Whether there's a law about it or not. The public schools, all these teachers that what are they formed by? They're formed by the education system. They all have to get a master's in education or some nonsense like that, which I still don't understand. It's like getting a degree in baseball. Doesn't mean you actually know anything about it. And some of the best teachers I ever knew, they did not have a degree in education. They had degrees in whatever their field was, their discipline was, and they had a gift for teaching, right? So skip out on the schools. That's what you have to do. And increasingly, like we saw that video from a major university, we have to skip out on college as well. Take some online classes, get some degree and something. But frankly, do it. You could learn more in a directed studies. And there are people that want to talk about these issues. And that really some of the discussions at a college level, you can find them. You can talk about it with them after you've done the reading. And you don't need to go to university, because the universities are held by the enemy. And there might be a few Catholic universities, if you got the money to shell out for it, that still have decent programs and whatnot. But really, all the universities, especially the mainline, they're held by the enemy. You can't send your kids there because you will form them to be modern post-Christian pagans. That's just the reality. You can't avoid it. So you can't be a conservative and say, oh, well, we got so-and-so on the school board. Now all the problems are fixed. And I go back to tweeting and watching sports ball and forgetting that there's actually a problem in the world. No, it's counter-revolution. Get your kids out of the communist indoctrination centers that are public education, and most private education too. That's the other thing. There are some private schools that are good. They're the exceptions that prove the rule. Most Catholic and parochial education is formed in the exact same mold that the public schools are. And they're like I said, there's exceptions that prove the rule for sure. But really, truly, it's not the place to send your kids unless you want them to become products of the culture, unless you want them to come out formed as communists, because that's what the curricula are designed for. That's what everything they learn is either false or twisted, right? They're not even math now. I used to think math was one unconquerable thing they'd never touch. And I looked at a math book from a Common Core math curriculum. Boy, was I wrong about that. So don't be conservative, be counter-revolutionary. The Republicans will not save you. Voting for them at the very best is just going to give you a few more years before it gets really nuts. They're just Democrats in slow motion. Don't waste your time. Don't get invested in all this stuff.
Fawaz, you inspired this part of the show here on News from the Pew with your thought. No, it's a good thing. It's a very good thing. So I want to give you the last word on that. Talking about conservatism and all of that stuff.
Ron, you guys brought up a good point. The ideal situation, of course, is homeschool. My wife and I homeschool. Looking back at some of the encyclicals of Leo the 13th, even John the 23rd, are talking about offering the head of the household, the husband or the man of the household, providing him enough income so that his wife doesn't have to work. She can stay home and watch the kids, because that's going to be the best for family and as well as the best for society. For some reason or another, there's going to be some folks who can't do that in this economy. We do it. We live as simply as possible so that my wife can stay home with a modest salary. We sacrifice a lot for that sake, and hope that other people would find ways to sacrifice so that the wife could stay home, educate the kids. It's going to be the best situation instead of daycare and things like that. Unfortunately, there's going to be some situations where we have to go out there and fight for those who can't. But the counter-revolution that Ryan talked about is specifically the main reason why, and a shameless plug, is why I'm working on this traditional Catholic rap album. Now, I don't like
Available
rap.
April 18th.
April 19th. Yeah, thank you. I'm not a fan of the music. I used to be. I grew up with it. I've been rapping since I was in middle school. I can do it. I can write. I can put a structural song together. I've been doing it for years. I took a 10-year hiatus. I got back to it mainly because now the music itself is syncopated. It's not the best thing to listen to. It's not intrinsically evil. It's good in moderation. But what's coming out, what's been popping out from the godless media is what does make it intrinsically evil is the music out there when it comes to the lyrics is the fact that it violates the principle of the integral good because it violates this. They blaspheme God. It's immodest. So I'm thinking to myself, well, let me put something out there that is specifically counter-revolution. I got a song that's coming off patriarchy and just completely as an anti-feminist song. And so you're right. We need to be. We have to have some counter-revolution to what's out there, and I think sometimes we have to have a grassroots and infiltrate the system that they've created in order for us to take over, or create a new system and compete. You saw a huge fan of, but you saw what's his name with the Daily Wire, the co-founder created a new shaving company that doesn't. Yeah, Jeremy, that it's competition, and there's a market for it because there's a forgotten other side, hundreds of millions of people who don't share the same values of the left, who are hungry for something different. So we got to tap into that and people mobilize. So that's what I got to say.
Excellent, gentlemen. This is News from the Pew, ladies and gentlemen. We are going to get to food issues in a moment, but I know Steve wants to put a little cherry on this one.
Well, you're bringing up this whole conservatism thing. What is conservatism today? They don't conserve anything. You see conservatives arms wide open to bring a tranny as governor in California because anything can be better than the gruesome Newsom. So you got they open up their trannies for that. You have Trump, who was, quote, the best gay president out there. I was in Denver when they had the rainbow flags with Trump all over it. He was loving it. You have CPAC, nothing Catholic in there. What is rejection of anything they do a lot is really a Protestant group, even though a Catholic leads it. But they're okay with they're a big tent. They let anything in. Trannies, pro-aborts is fine if as long as you don't say it. Obviously, contraceptions, A-OK. You have conservatives think Lincoln is a conservative. What Zelensky just did is basically what Lincoln did back in the 1860s. Jail, shut up all the dissenters, imprison anybody that wrote against him. Waged war on a group that left peacefully, wanting to be states' rights. So, what is the idea of what a conservative is anymore? It's just as Brian McClanahan talks about the Republican Party as the stupid party. At least the Democrats will do it. The GOP does it in a weird way or something like that. So people say what conservatism is, or I'm a conservative. They don't even know what that is.
Yeah, conservatism is just great fundraising emails. It's like the NRA or any of these other groups that are supposedly on our side. They're really out for fundraising clips because they let it happen. And then they're like, well, reelect me and I'll stop it. Well, you didn't stop it like with KBJ. It's like you didn't stop her a year ago. Why are you stopping her now? Oh, because it's time to fundraise for the November elections and so forth. Got it. Okay. And so let's move on to food issues here. And let's start with the creepy old man himself saying, just straight out, folks, telling you what we've been telling you and others have been telling you. Now they're just bragging about it.
With regard to food shortage, yes, we did talk about food shortages. And it's going to be real. The price of these sanctions is not just imposed upon Russia. It's imposed upon an awful lot of countries as well, including European countries and our country as well.
We have been sanctioned. You and I have been sanctioned for the NWO, right? He said, we heard at the beginning of the show, the New World Order. You and I are suffering those sanctions so they can continue their agenda. And it's happening with food. The White House and all the powers that be have been warning about a cyber attack. I have a feeling I have no information on it, but the thing that they would hit, either CIA as a false flag, or if the Russians do it, because they're very capable, is a water treatment plant or a couple water treatment plants. Think things are bad now, folks? Try going without water for a couple days. It's 1 gallon of water per person per day to survive. Most people don't even have that in their house without tap water. So you have to think about that. You have to think about the fact that on top of those food shortages, they're actively trying to get rid of meat. They're actively trying to get rid of beef, chicken, all of these other things. There was an article in Bloomberg this weekend where the writer, who is a college-educated woman, said, "Yeah, inflation's going to be bad. Stop eating meat and start eating lentils." It's like, well, I know she's not. She's going to get as much meat to eat as she wants. She's going to heat her home with gas, whatever it takes to keep her warm, while you and I suffer. And I'll stop my rant here. Please stop ignoring it. Now, I'm not telling you to go out and buy 2 years worth of freeze-dried food. Start slowly, and you have time until there is no time. In the prepper community, you always have time until there is no more
Urging
time.
private sector partners to take immediate action to shore up their defenses against potential cyber attacks. We've previously warned about the potential for Russia to conduct cyber attacks against the United States, including as a response to the unprecedented economic costs that the U.S. and allies and partners impose in response to Russia's further invasion of Ukraine. Today, we are reiterating those warnings, and we're doing so based on evolving threat intelligence that the Russian government is exploring options for potential cyber attacks on critical infrastructure in the United States.
Potential. She sounds like a bad avatar from a 1999 video game, like the one that introduces you. That's all my thought. Potentially. It's like, lady, can you give me a different expression? Anyway, I'm ranting about something else. It doesn't really matter. I'm sorry about that.
Siri voice.
Right? She didn't change at all. But John, they're telling you that the everybody likes to say the quiet part. They're saying the quiet part out loud. But yet there's still a normalcy bias with people. What are your thoughts on all of that? The food issues and everything there.
Well, I'm going to cheat a little bit. I think I promised this might possibly be the last time I do this, but just to go back to, and I promise
No,
connect
it's
with
your
food.
time. Take your time, my friend. Do whatever you want to do.
So, I mean, I agree with in essentially with what everyone else said about conservatives. We have the most rotten conservatives here in the U.S., but I think there's a caveat that we can't forget about, and that's that conservatism, as it should be, as if we're properly defining it, does have a role in a society, because a society once established, it's a sort of being that wants to preserve its being. All right, that's the way all living things are. They want to preserve their being. They do what they can to preserve their being. The res publica, a public thing like that, society wants to preserve its being. That we don't naturally we don't want revolutions. Okay, so there's something about conservatism philosophically that Aristotle noted, and St. Thomas does as well, that there's something to be conserved. Now, yes, de facto, what's happened in the U.S. has been we've been, essentially recycling what the liberals were saying 20 years ago. That is true, but I don't want to poo-poo the notion that conservatism is per se bad. It's just it has been corrupted. It's been perverted here in the U.S., but it has a place, and I think that's why the diabolical folks who call themselves conservatives right now in the U.S. use the term, because they know that most of us who are seeking the true, the good, and the beautiful, we recognize that there's something to that. We do want to conserve, stability here. We want our families to grow up where it's not, 1990s Venezuela or Colombia, So I think they know that, and they're playing off that natural desire, and it is natural according to Aristotle and St. Thomas Aquinas. So I want to throw that out there, because I don't want us to be completely negative on conservatism just as a concept. It's just the way it has worked out in the States has been a disaster, and in a lot of other countries where they have so-called conservatives. But but that relates actually to food as well. What we've with so many people moving off of farms, moving away from farms, selling their farms to the different sources that feed big ag, has gotten us away from any sort of thought about conserving our soil or just conserving the, if you will, the environment. I use that with scare quotes and the broadest possible sense there, because if you're just consuming food and not thinking about the whole cycle of the way things work to get you your food to the table, I mean, we can tell people till we're blue in the face, let this be on your radar. And Rick, you're right to do it. I mean, we got to be yelling at people about this. But until we really come to terms with the fact that there's a cycle in the way in which we get our food, and like it involves feces, it involves other sorts of things that could bite you in the soil, things like that. Until we really come to terms with what it takes to get our food from the ground or from an animal to the table, I feel like we're in some sense wasting our breath, because we have to learn how to conserve our soil, to conserve things so that we will be ready for whatever happens. I mean, people live like this for many, many, many centuries before the consumerist culture, and I'm talking about consumerism in regard to food. The fast food culture really took hold here in the 50s or 60s. I mean, it started taking hold a little bit earlier, but I mean, up until the 50s or 60s, you still had a lot of folks on family farms, and they could at least relate to the things we're saying right now. Probably 9 out of 10 Americans just this is right over their head, because what goes into producing food, no clue. Even if they work in a restaurant, no clue at all.
Yeah, a lot of people, the joke is, it's like, what happens when the food runs out? I'll just go to the grocery store, man. What are you talking about? Just go get more food. Because you're right. We have been stripped away from the land and shoved into urban centers and forced to fend for ourselves. But Ryan, you're next. Steve's next. Steve, what's your thoughts on Joe Biden and everybody else? I mean, you've been preaching about it for how long? It's time to hold up the book on the New World Order or the Great Reset or whatever, whichever books you've been reading, because this is right out of the playbook, man. Now they're just joking about it. It's just a joke.
2020 is a year that has really changed. It is thanks to technology that we are able to join the cyber polygon entirely remotely. This training is another step in creating a trusted digital environment and fostering open dialogue to discuss even the most challenging cybersecurity issues.
Nobody can fight these phenomena, which are only going to increase in the next couple of years, this dynamic technological environment.
As this world grows in force, and this happens throughout the world, it's just a statement of the obvious. You need to protect people properly.
As Schwab talked about that being the next, it's going to be worse than the pandemic that happened last time. And I mean, that was what you just saw with Cyber Polygon. That was basically the event 201 for cyber attacks. They did it. You can look on YouTube to watch the entire thing, 3 or 4 hours long. Go at it. You'll see it. It'll scare you half to death. But yeah, I mean, there's what Jonathan was talking about with food. There was this movie Leap Year when the guy grabs some chicken out there, breaks his neck, and he's going to cook some chicken. And the lady goes, "Ah, what are you doing?" He goes, "How you think you eat chicken? Where does chicken come from? You have to kill the chicken to eat the chicken." She says what Rick says, "Well, from the grocery store? I mean, it comes out of a bag. How do you get the chicken?" Yeah, we got to start planning, because if you're prepared, then come what may, whatever comes at you, you'll be ready for it. And as long as you get your mind, this is going back to the thing, get your mind right. If you're developed in your theology, you develop knowing that our hope is, for heaven, not for heaven on earth here, but to get to heaven, then, they could come at you like, St. Margaret Clitheroe's feast days tomorrow. She didn't care about what they had to say about her. She backed up the priest. She knew what was going to cause her death. She still did it. And they pressed her to death for it. We have to have that kind of courage that those, like the English martyrs had. That, all right, turn it all off. We can still make it. If the internet goes down, you can still make it to heaven. If they cut your food off, they cut your water off, we can still make it to heaven. Figure out how to, there's water containers you can get off Amazon or wherever that can collect it from your house, so you can put it through a filter that you have water. Rain comes out of the sky. You can get it collected, filter it, bada bing. Food, get some chickens in the back, as Ice Age Farmer talks about all the time. If 1 in 3 people have chickens in their back, you could take down the egg industry. Get to know who's local around you for raw milk, beef. Go to your farmers markets, clean up, grow something in your backyard, learn how to grow things.
Rabbits, man, rabbits produce a ton of meat per
rabbits.
how much like area they need. Y'all, hey man,
they taste good.
You want to eat?
They reproduce quick too, so yeah, that's good thing too. You have to kill it. There you go.
Yeah,
I have books over here
rabbits
on
are good.
how to butcher, how to kill wild game, how to cook wild game. Get these things and get yourself up to date on that. I know Ryan does it all the time, but you get more and more into it, practice it, and you'll be good at it.
Yep, Ryan. Then we'll get the applause.
So yeah, this is something that's been going on for a while, and it fits in with the WEF goals, all the things that they laid out, which again were already laid out in Agenda 2030 and Agenda 2021, and all these things that the UN has been putting out for years. And that's a conspiracy theory. In fact, last year there's someone otherwise intelligent individual that just suffers from the normalcy bias. And I warned last year, I was telling him in an argument we got over something else, that because of COVID measures and everything, our food supply is going to be cut, and there's going to be a famine unlike anything the world has ever seen before. You will not be able to get food. And he just poo-pooed it. Oh, no, that'll never happen. Yeah, there's some strains, but our food supply will be fine. No, it won't. And everything that the government is doing is designed to make it worse. Not just the sanctions we see and the sanctions coming at Russia or the conflict itself, but everything about it and what the government policy in every other part of the world is doing is limiting food production. There's no doubt about it. They are purposely trying to create the greatest famine ever known to mankind. And, because that's how you get to net zero. Genocide. That is the only way you get to net zero. And that's exactly what the governments of the world are right now trying to do. So they can all comply with the UN Agenda 2030 and the climate change hoax and all the other BS that's just properly demonic. And there's a bunch of stories on this. If I can share the screen correctly, that, let's see. There we go. So we'll start with this one. We talked about this prior to the show. Bird flu found in Nebraska, so 570,000 chickens to be killed. What they neglect to mention is that the Nebraska Department of Agriculture used PCR tests to determine the outbreak of this bird flu. Okay, sorry about all the mess here. And they're going to be going after small farms, backyard farmers, not the big poultry factories, of course, but everyone else. And so just to stop this bird flu, which of course is what's that going to do? It's going to take all these chickens out of the food supply, whether it's eggs or meat or anything else. And again, just like with the unspecified virus of unspecified origin, it's based on the PCR test, which can't tell the difference if this has been exposed to this or if it's seeing some viral matter that's not actually infecting the bird. And in all these cases too, the birds are usually fine. It would have been fine after they killed them. Next one, Cargill. Everyone knows Cargill, right? Food chain reaction crisis simulation ends with global carbon tax. Ooh. And what I was just saying. So this is a simulation from 2015, mind you. Climate, hunger, civil unrest, and spiking food prices came together at the food chain reaction game. This is a war game that they do in DC. Cooperation mostly won the day. On Monday and Tuesday, 65 international policymakers, academics, business, and thought leaders gathered at the World Wildlife Fund's headquarters in Washington, D.C. to game out how the world will respond to a future food crisis. The game took the players from the year 2020 to 2030. As was projected, the decade brought two major food crises, with prices approaching 400% of the long-term average. We're getting there. A raft of climate-related extreme weather events, climate-related, governments toppling in Pakistan and Ukraine, and famine and refugee crises in Bangladesh, Myanmar, Chad, and Sudan, which of course we're seeing all now. And remember that this is 7 years ago.
Yep.
So these war games are often about, pulling together all the things that we're starting to see now. Last two. Hungary to ban all grain exports effective immediately. So not only do you have Russia and Ukraine, 30% of all the world's grain collectively, not exporting anything, and actually Ukrainians may not be able to plant on account of the quote unquote war. Russia is not able to sell its grain out here. And so that just disappears from the world food supply, and it may not be available next year if they don't get to plant. Right. So Hungary's banning all its exports, which actually is a smart move for a country to preserve its food supply. What's Brandon doing? He's selling everything we got as fast as we can. And lastly, Putin's energy shock is becoming a world food crisis. Brace for rationing. And this is from the Sunday Morning Herald. And I'm not going to read the article to you. You can find it, Sunday Morning Herald. But basically, the gist of this article is that with Putin stopping the exporting of fertilizers, the sanctions preventing the the exporting of fertilizer. Now, I'm not in favor of using chemical fertilizers myself. There's better ways to do it, but that's how the worldwide agriculture market, what you get in the supermarket, is based on. And so that's affecting things like coffee. That's affecting soybeans, which again, I don't care about soybeans, but most meat you get in the store is a product of soybeans and soybean production, and so on and so forth. So to go on, coffee. What happens if you go to the store and there is no coffee because there was no fertilizer for them to?
Oh, that's war, man. That's just straight up war. That's conflict. No coffee.
Exactly. It's stock up. Even though coffee in a survival situation, coffee is somewhat of a luxury item. Nevertheless, and then this too. U.S. farm animals will be cold by suffocation, drowning, and shooting. And there's multiple reasons for that. One, bird flu and the swine flu based on phony PCR testing once again. And the other reason, of course, will be not being able to find sufficient feed for the animals because the soybeans, everyone's locking down their soybeans. And U.S. soybeans are sold through like 2025. Thank you, Brandon administration, to the world's most favored nation, second most favored nation, namely China. So, there's, and granted, I'm not in favor of, soybeans because the phytoestrogens and all these things that go into the meat, that go into you. That's why we raise our own meat. That's why we network locally for animals. But all those things so if you're like me and you're supernatural and you can taste preservatives in food because you never eat preservatives, then what you're going to find is that the places you get your food, new demands are going to be put on those places because the supermarkets are going to have less and less. And that's going to, and then your prices are still going to go up as everything else goes up exponentially. So, and I could continue on this, but that's basically the path that's been traced out. We've been talking about it. We've been called conspiracy theorists and nut jobs and all these things by the normies. And now here's Biden. Conspiracy theorist Biden saying, yep, that's right. Get ready for food shortages and it's gonna be worse. And there you are.
Yep. Everybody who's talking about food shortages will never be short of food. Just remember that. And it doesn't matter if you get if you take over the House and the Senate in 2022, it does not matter.
They will eat well, but because it's a big club and you ain't in it.
You ain't in it. Fwaz, jump on in. Fwaz, who loves rabbits, by the way.
Just to piggyback on what you guys said, you guys laid it down brilliantly. Well, first of all, talking about rabbit, great source of meat. My wife made me a stew. I did complain. I said there was a lot of hair in my stew, so I didn't want that. But anyway, so
it happens.
I'll take that.
It happens. There's a goat neck that I cut, and when we skinned it, a little bit of hair got in there. So we left it in the crock pot for a while. And
H-E-R-E.
H-E-R-E. We're the joking part of the program.
Yeah, tortoise and the hair. Hair.
What I was, looking back, I think there's a great typology. Jonathan, you probably know this more than I do. There's a great typology between the temptation that Adam and Eve faced in the garden and the temptation that Christ also faced in the desert, which ultimately that's the same temptation that the evil one offers all of us. And it seems to me like these folks who are taking fame and fortune and want their statues erected all over the city in their fourth industrial revolution have taken this false, hey, I'll make you rich and famous if you just do my work, and this is all the work of the evil one. As far as the food shortages go, yeah, population control is the main key here. And for those who are left, if they want to stick around, they might have a bottleneck. They want to say, hey, we've got plenty of food in the container, do X, and we'll glad to share it with you, as long as you do what we tell you to do. And Jonathan, you also mentioned the beauty, the truth and the beautiful, and the true. I don't know about you guys, but the reason why I appreciate someone like Father Ripperger or someone like Father Isaac is because our generation past previous to ours, were robbed of the truth of the Catholic faith. And I like listening to Father Ripperger because he just explains St. Thomas to me in a practical way, where he understands it and passes it on to where I can understand it, someone in my mental capacity. So if we the same, for example, for folks who don't know where to get started and how to grow their own food, if we have some resources for them that we could give to them, because somebody is in there who's been used to the system and running around to the grocery stores their whole lives, and their parents doing the same thing, attached to the system, are thinking, well, I don't know how to do any of this stuff. Can you help me get started? If we could pass on some sort of resource or how to do this and that, I think that'll be beneficial for folks who really want to survive. I think we spend so much time investing in this and that, and people putting their money in Bitcoin. Where instead you should be buying land as much as you possibly can and creating your own food in the cycle that you guys are talking about. I think we got to get serious about that as soon as possible. So that's pretty much all I got to say about that.
I know Steve's got a video we'll take a look at in regards to the food shortages. Also, tip: fat people, skinny people don't go into food shortages. So maybe plump up a little bit after Lent. That's all I'm saying right there.
So if you just go on to the World Economic Forum YouTube channel, they have all this, what we're talking about here. Here's Transforming Food Systems and Land Use Part 2. There's a Part 1, believe it or not. And they tell you how they're going to screw up the food chain. Here's this great one. Oh, that doesn't show up? Darn it. Hold on. Let me change this. My apologies, people.
That's fine, Steve.
Including you guys.
You get one less ration this week, so it's okay. All right. In Gulag, if you don't get the thing to play, man, you get one less ration, buddy.
One less ration of Victory Gin.
There it goes.
I'll explain that in a minute.
Eat folks. Keeping it fun.
This is from your friends at the World Economic Forum.
Your friends.
It's all about carbon. Look at him breathing out carbon.
Yeah, kill him. Actually, don't kill him.
Reducing the likelihood of pandemics.
Right. Makes me want to run my truck outside right now.
That goes into what I was talking about last year, about that was a test run to see how low they could get the carbon down.
Yeah. Well, they had articles about it too.
Yeah.
Oh, the earth healed. It was amazing. I don't want it to heal, sucker. Nope.
There's nothing natural about that.
Nope. Yeah, absolutely disgusting. So folks, it's never too late. While you can, grab extra canned food. If you don't have a garden or any of that stuff, canned food is a big thing to get. Water is a big thing to get. Do not be afraid to hit the $1.25 tree. Spam, things that y'all don't want to eat now. It's better than having nothing, right? You can always build a supply. But do not fret. Do not give in to despair. There are ways about it. You can always, if you don't know anywhere to start, info@thearmedcatholic.com. Send me. I'm kind of a prepper myself in that way. So, I mean, I don't have a farm to grow my stuff. So I have to do other ways as well. So if you're kind of just like, this is too much, send me an email. I'll walk you through it. Do not despair and do not freak out, because we're Catholics. We have the theological virtue of hope, and that's what we will do. So let's move on to our final part of the show, where we talk about our Catholic tip of the week, our saint of the week, and the cry room. And since Jonathan, who is going first, has to bug out, let's get those from him right now.
Well, here's what I give for a tip of the week. Read St. Ignatius of Antioch, or as they called him in the earlier church fathers, called him Ignatius the martyr. He knows he's going to Rome to die, but he makes a point in one of his letters, like, we're all going to die at some point. I'm going to be crushed like the wheat for bread. So it kind of comes up as we're talking about the two of the four biggest wheat producers in the world, Russia and Ukraine, having some serious problems there with exporting any wheat. So that metaphor about being crushed up like grains of wheat comes up in Ignatius the Martyr, St. Ignatius of Antioch. He has some beautiful stuff there, knowing that we're all going to die. It's a good, as Rick just mentioned there about our Catholic perspective, having the theological virtue of hope there. St. Ignatius, his letters are short, relatively speaking, and to the point. I mean, you could read all of his letters in the time it would take you to read one papal encyclical since the time of John Paul II. So that just gives you an idea. Much less time than it would take you to read one encyclical since 1988. So, go and read all of his letters and be impressed.
What's longer, War and Peace or a modern encyclical?
Ooh, be careful, Tolstoy. You're going to have a challenge coming up there. But my saint has got to be my beloved governor, Ron DeSantis. He did two things this week that were really impressive, and maybe not on the same scale as anything in regard to the faith, but just in practical matters, I think are very good. One is that signed something into legislation to have all high schoolers take a financial education class. I don't know what the class is going to look like. I don't know if any sort of curriculum was introduced along with it. I just saw the news blurb and a brief little snippet of it. But to at least have people thinking about how money works, how exchange of goods works, like Robert Kiyosaki, for one, has talked about. I mean, in modern day America, it benefits you to be in a ton of debt. He's made that point, and I think he's right de facto about like where we are right now in the States. It's sad that that's the case, but that is the case, and that's how he's made hundreds of millions of dollars. So something on financial literacy, I think, is going to be good for people in the state of Florida. And then he also, I'm a big sports fan. I think there's a lot of good metaphors, like in the New Testament, from sports, and him just giving his how should I put it delicately, his act of rebellion to the reigning class by declaring the second place in one of the swimming events where a boy beat all the girls. But the second place swimmer in one of these events was a Floridian. I think she grew up in Naples, if I'm not mistaken, Naples, Florida. So near Ave Maria, declared her the winner according to the state of Florida. That we declare her to be the right and true winner of that particular race. So two beautiful things that our governor did here, and I'm especially proud of him. And yeah, he gets my nod for that this week.
Cry room. I need a cry room.
Yes.
Sorry, a little forceful on that. I need it.
I'm going to say, even though she was very charitable to my family and at various points there in Rome, and we lived there at the same time, Anne Barnhart for spreading a lie about the consecration, saying that it invoked explicitly Pachamama. When she wrote this, the text had already been released in English. She claimed that she had a Spanish-speaking friend who told her that it included a reference to Pachamama. Those versions are up on the Vatican website as well, Spanish, Italian, German, French versions. So, you can go and look. It's not there. She simply lied, or else someone lied to her. But I would include in the cry room, sadly, a lot of otherwise very devout people who've done a lot of good for Holy Mother Church who spread that without confirming it. But you don't do that. You don't spread something like that, an accusation of something so grave as invoking in an idolatrous manner a goddess. Yes, it has been done before by the Pope, something like an idolatrous action, I think materially and even formally, but you don't attribute that to someone, the intent to make a consecration like that, unless you have proof of it to back it up. I'm sorry, that's we don't do that as Catholics. That sort of wrong isn't justified. That sort of means isn't justified to come down hard on Bergoglio, as Anne always calls him, because she doesn't think he's the Pope. So I put her and those who repeated that without checking it out in the cry room.
Now remember, folks, the cry room is key. Whoever wins gets to determine the order the following week. So make sure these cry room picks are worth it. Steve, you are up next. Who's your cry? Well, tip of the week, saint of the week, and then your cry room.
Well, tip of the week, I'll go with I brought up Garnier last week. I'll do it again since we're recording this on Thursday, the 24th. It's mid-Lent. The first half of Lent's over with. And Garnier, if you read it today, it gives you basically a good pep talk about, hey, all right, you're at the halfway point. Keep it up for the second half. Hunker down. You're almost there. Now, if you weren't doing it, he goes, basically, if you're not doing the fast, you're not doing abstinence, kind of gives you a little foot up your keister in a sense. Get to it. How can you celebrate Easter in a sense that he's going, if you're not putting the time into Lent and abstinence and penance? So it's a great write-up today. So it's just, all right, halfway point. Apparently in the East, it's a big feast day today, big festival. In the West, it's kind of, he writes that it gets pushed off to Sunday. So hey, we're at halftime. Don't give up the penance for the halftime. But remember, you're halfway there. You're halfway home. My saint of the week, I'll go with John Stockton, because what he was talking about, let me put a clip of that. He said this, he talked about on Jason Whitlock's show. Here it is.
Don't think I see it, Whitlock, when you called me a racist for putting
so-called vaccine, to have that mandated and have them have to wear masks and to stare across the court at them every day. I felt like I had a duty to not. Somebody's got to stand up for these kids. And
you love Gonzaga. At some point,
he talks about just him having a big stance, a big platform to be able to say, I can't just sit back and do nothing. I have to do something. And he's very well informed on the topics. He's also, if you don't know, he was taught by nuns. He's a Catholic gentleman and goes to Mass Sunday. I have no idea everything else. He doesn't go out and flaunt it. He doesn't have social media. He just stays at home, educates his kids. And he talks about how you have to have faith in everything you do. And he brings it up to his kids on a daily basis, he said. But he's very close to the chest type of guy.
Yeah.
And my
cry room.
I just went stupid. My cry room. My cry room, I will go with the country of France.
Country.
French lawyer arrested for treason after helping, I won't say his name because we'll get kicked off, prove world leaders have committed crimes against humanity in the name of the Rona. So she was arrested for treason. So I would assume that this is coming for a lot of us down the pipe, for anybody that stands up to this as well.
Yep, just don't go into it skinny. Skinny people don't do well in food shortages. So after Lent, bulk up, as they say. Ryan, you're next. Your tip of the week, saint of the week, and then cry room. I know you have a passage from 1984 you'd like to read to us.
That's going to be my tip of the week, is read 1984 if you haven't, or read it again if you've already read it. So this is from chapter 5. I'm going to take a minute or so just to read this because it kind of draws together everything we talked about today. So it's Winston in his work cafeteria, which is hilarious as it described the nastiness of the stew and and their victory gin that is given to them and things like that. And then as he's going, he sees one of his work friends. So quote, "Just the man I was looking for," said a voice at Winston's back. He turned around. It was his friend Syme, who worked in the research department. Perhaps friend was not exactly the right word. You did not have friends nowadays. You had comrades. But there were some comrades whose society was pleasanter than that of others. Syme was a philologist, a specialist in news speak. Indeed, he was one of the enormous team of experts now engaged in compiling the 11th edition of the Newspeak Dictionary. He was a tiny creature, smaller than Winston, with dark hair, large protuberant eyes, etc. And I'm going to skip over that. "I wanted to ask you whether you'd got any razor blades," he said. "Not one," said Winston, with a sort of guilty haste. "I've tried all over the place. They just don't exist any longer. Everyone kept asking you for for razor blades. Actually, he had 2 unused ones which he was hoarding up. There had been a famine of them for months past. At any given moment, there was some necessary article which the party shops were unable to supply. Sometimes it was buttons, sometimes it was darning wool, sometimes it was shoelaces. At present, it was razor blades. You could only get hold of them, if at all, by scrounging more or less furtively on the quote-unquote free market. I've been using the same blade for 6 weeks, he added untruthfully. The queue gave another jerk forward, and as they halted, he turned and faced Syme again. Each of them took a greasy metal tray from a pile at the edge of the counter. Did you go and see the prisoners hanged yesterday? Said Syme. Oh, I was working, said Winston indifferently. I shall see it on the flicks, I suppose. A very inadequate substitute, said Syme. His mocking eyes roved over Winston's face. I know you, the eyes seemed to say. I see through you. I know very well why you didn't go to see those prisoners hanged. In an intellectual way, Syme was venomously orthodox. He would talk with a disagreeable, gloating satisfaction of helicopter raids on enemy villages, the trial and confessions of thought criminals, the executions in the cellars of the Ministry of Love. Talking to him was largely a matter of getting him away from such subjects and entangling him, if possible, in the technicalities of newspeak, on which he was the authoritative and interesting. Winston turned his back a little aside to avoid the scrutiny of the large dark eyes. It was a good hanging, said Syme reminiscently. I think it spoils it when they tie their feet together. I like to see them kicking. And above all, at the end, the tongue sticking right out in blue, a quite bright blue. That's the detail that appeals to me. Next, please, yelled the white aproned prole with the ladle. Winston and Syme pushed their trays beneath the grill. Onto each was dumped swiftly the regulation lunch. Metal pannikin of pinkish-gray stew, a hunk of bread, a cube of cheese, a mug of milkless Victory coffee, and 1 saccharin tablet, etc., etc. And then it goes on and describes the Victory gin and other such things. And so, again, I do say read 1984. It's a lot of satire about what's coming. And you could see what's coming. And you know, that meme, 1984 was supposed to be a warning, not a blueprint. Right. And well, if any of what I just read resonates with what we've talked about today, I think that it's in the blueprint phase. Mm-hmm. So my saint of the week, I don't know. Actually, you know, I do have a saint of the week. To follow the format we're trying to follow and highlight somebody that we like. Last second here. All right. Actually, I'll get them both in one shot. So my saint of the week, Zuby. If you don't know Zuby is British rap artist. I don't know much about his music. I probably don't care much about his music, but he has been very public and very strongly going about masks, about the tyranny. He's used his platform. He's taken a lot of flack for it. He's lost performing deals and things of that sort, but he's been very outspoken against the COVID regime. And I know he's lost a lot for it. So I definitely give the guy kudos for everything he's done there. And then moving to the cry room. Not Mr. Thomas, so-called Leah Thomas, but rather I'm putting Emma Wayant and Erica Sullivan in the cry room. They're both huddled together at number 3 doing their own ceremony, trying to aggrandize as if, hey, we're the actual women here, you know, because they are the ones who agreed to swim. They supported so-called Leah Thomas swimming. They supported that entire thing, and not a word about it, really. And so they weren't willing to stand up for the rights. But now they're going to make some little thing about that as the controversy rolls, and they can get trending on it or whatever else. So, so they're the ones I'm going to put in the cry room.
Yeah, I'll really quickly say, and I definitely we gotta get Fwaz in here, but I don't care. I know some people are very up in arms about the swimmer. I don't care, because every single person in that pool, every person in that arena, 9 out of 10 of those, 99%, all voted for Joe Biden. All probably hashtag trans life, trans equality, all that. They were down for the cause, and guess what? Welcome to real life.
I know Jonathan could relate to this, but if you played ball, most of those coaches played or participated in these events, you get competitive. So if you're a coach and you see your team or person getting crushed by someone like that, a girl getting destroyed by a guy, how do you not lose it? I know I'd be thrown out.
Hey man, they're all about hashtags, equality. They don't care. They all like I'm saying, they all participated in it. They all marched for it. They all wore the pins. This is it. This is what you wanted. You get it now. So I don't care. I know some people are up in arms. Not me. It's like, wait till I come out of retirement and I enroll in St. Mary's as a female Ricardo Beret, and I'm gonna make legendary games. And I'm getting drafted by the WNBA, and I'm making $50,000 a year, baby.
We're just gonna get stuffed by some 6'2" girl. And then
oh, dude, I'm gonna rain. I'm not going near the basket. I'm gonna rain terror from the 3-point line. Don't you worry about me. I'm gonna set records. Anyway, Fwaz, I'm taking up your time. Tip of the week, Saint, and then Cry Room, sir.
Yeah, my virtue of the week actually is going to be the virtue of eutrapelia, which is right recreation. I'm not talking about playing video games all day long. I'm talking about right recreation in the evening time, or what after a hard work. More specifically, if you are age of 21 years or older, to pour yourself. You can do this after Lent if you've given up alcohol. To pour yourself a small glass on a daily basis, or maybe 3 or 4 times a week, of single malt whiskey. And the reason I say that is because it's been found that it has actually more antioxidants than wine. It's delicious. It has a lot of health benefits, kind of help with those cancer cells, dementia, Alzheimer's, and things like that. So take some time to relax. Proper eutrapelia, a glass of whiskey. It has no sugar, any of that stuff. So it's the perfect healthy drink that you can have. It's an acquired taste. If you haven't really taken it in, drink a lot of it throughout the months and the year so that you build that acquired taste. So eutrapelia is my virtue. My saint of the week actually is going to be the lawmakers here in Kentucky, because they officially shut down all of the emergency state powers that Bashir had, which is our governor here. And he tried to veto it, and they vetoed it back to his face and won the case. So his emergency powers have been stripped for good. So kudos to the local lawmakers here in Kentucky. And my cry room person, I'm going to go with Madam Hillary Clinton. And the reason is because she recently contracted COVID, and she asked for movie recommendations that her and Bill could watch, and everyone was sending her some satire stuff, especially the 13 Hour, and that was just some funny stuff over on Twitter. And as far as eutrapelia goes, you have to ponder the importance of the usage of time. Okay, so don't forget about that. That's going to be important as well. So those are my virtue.
Excellent. Also, don't forget Black Hawk Down. Great viewing for the Clintons. Don't forget about that one. That's always something to be watching. All right, folks. I don't have either one of those because Twitter only allows four people, and I, as your humble host, am so humble that I will not participate because I would win every time. Anyway,
you're the humble guy we know.
What? I am. I am so humble. It is legendary. Anyway, I want to thank everybody for joining us here on News from the Pew, for Ryan and Fwaz and John and the other guy, Steve. I am your humble host, Captain Middle America himself, Rick Barrett. And now, always and forever, Viva Cristo Rey. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.